Hi, my name is Lexi. I'm 38 years old and I'm a new mum after 4 years of IVF. IVF is one of the biggest roller coasters I think pretty much anybody could go through, in that you have lots of hope and lots of disappointment, and you kind of have to pick yourself up and keep going. Um, and it's not for everyone. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's a very tough road. Um, So I think experience wise, it's one of the toughest things I've gone through, just mentally and physically.
What were the surprises during your IVF journey that you didn't expect?
I think the thing I wasn't expecting the most was how long the road is and how unpredictable it is. I think when you go into it, a lot of the time, naively and maybe on purpose, it's tailored to not set your expectations up as it being a long, hard, expensive road so that you try it. And for some people, it's not. But for me, it was a long, complicated process. And I think that was something I wasn't expecting. I think another thing I wasn't expecting was how willing I was to continue on that road for as long as I did. I thought it was going to be a year out of my life, bish, bash, bosh, baby, on with my days. And that was not the reality. And I think I also thought, oh, if it doesn't work, I'll rethink and I'll do something else. But I kept going.
So, what was the thing that kept you motivated through that journey that was longer that you first envisioned?
I think what kept me motivated throughout was just my want to be a mum and to have a baby and to give it everything I had. And as I'd started on the road, I think I thought, well, I might as well just keep going. Um, and I was very open minded that there were other ways to become a mum and to have a family. And so I was also trying mentally to prepare for what might come after that. But I think I wanted to feel like I'd given it my all before. I think I thought I knew when it would be time to stop. So I think, yeah, some sort of inner drive to just see it out and tough it out and see what would happen.
Along that journey, did you feel supported, and what support systems were in place for you to help you through that?
During my journey, I felt so supported by my close knit um, world around me, from my family, from my wrestling family as well. I was training to wrestle and was starting my wrestling journey, and my training school and all the people I was wrestling with knew what was happening and that I was going to have to stop for a bit to do this. And I stopped for a lot longer than I thought I would. And they were all very supportive and kept in touch and were sort of just there if I wanted to chat about it. And I didn't tell loads of people what was happening, but those who did know were amazing. And I also had a really good support network in a website called IVF Babel, which was a really great resource of information. It was set up by two mums who'd been through IVF who realized there was nothing online to educate anybody. So that website and that community were really supportive as well.
So, you go through the journey, and then you finally find out you were pregnant. How long was the journey to you finding out that you were pregnant? But most importantly, how did it feel to find out that you were pregnant?
So my IVF journey in total was 4 years in the making. And so yeah, from about 4 years from my first tests in the fertility clinic to finding out I was pregnant, which was it was a quite a surreal experience. I think when most people find out they're pregnant, they start picking out names, they send pictures of scans to people. And I think I was sort of in denial for the majority of my pregnancy. I didn't actually tell even my family till I was nearly halfway through. Because I think, having suffered quite a few losses along the way, and a lot of, because I was quite open with some people about it along the way, when I was going through previous rounds of IVF, people knew, so they knew roughly what date I would find out stuff. And this was the first time I'd actually not told anybody I was doing a round. And so I think,
Right.
therefore, no one knew I was actually trying. And so I think I sort of kept it to myself as a little secret. Well, me and my husband and our doctor knew, and weirdly, my husband's dentist knew, because I don't know, Tom felt the need to share with the dentist. But yeah, those are the 4 people who knew, and I think it was quite nice that no one knew for a little while. It was like our
Mm.
little secret to just sort of get used to. So I think anxious and, yeah, anxious was probably the first feeling, but yeah, when I realized we were actually gonna go through with it was probably about halfway through and it was gonna happen. But even then I was still quite anxious about it.
Are you in a position to talk about your losses?
Yeah. So during my journey, I was quite lucky that I had quite a few embryos um, from the get go. So um, during that time, I think, yeah, we had 4 transfers, so 4 embryo transfers. And so the first 3 either didn't take or resulted in a very early pregnancy that didn't then develop further into a viable pregnancy, as they call it. So I think, yeah, I didn't get past a few weeks at any point, which doesn't really count in the medical world as a miscarriage. But to me,
Yeah.
each one was a potential baby and had a due date. And, my pregnancy was the 4th of my embryo transfers. So the first
Mm.
3 resulted in early losses, which was really hard and disappointing and didn't always necessarily medically classify as a miscarriage because they happened so early. But to me, they were obviously big losses,
Sure.
and were the result of months of injections, treatment, thousands of pounds worth of medication, and just emotionally quite hard to pick yourself up and go back and start again, if you will. So yeah, they were tough.
But on reflection now, from
Mm.
from the point of view of you now, how did IVF affect you emotionally?
I think what's interesting about my IVF journey was it came at a time where I was finally in quite a good place. I spent a lot of my 20s struggling with anxiety, low self esteem, and I've spoken a lot in the past about how finding wrestling and becoming a wrestler was a very big part of building myself and my mental health up and finding something I could do because I spent a lot of my life thinking of things which I couldn't do. And so to then find that I couldn't have a baby and that my body couldn't sustain a pregnancy was really hard, I think, on my mental health. I had to give up wrestling to do IVF because you can't bump when you're trying to grow a bump because it dislodges embryos and is not good for general IVF practices.
Mm.
So, yeah, I was not allowed to wrestle whilst doing the IVF treatment. And so, therefore, the big part of my identity that I had built for myself got taken away. And the thing that brought me confidence and an escape from the world was suddenly taken. So I think the emotions that I felt were a real mix of anger, frustration, anxiety, and just, yeah, a kind of a loss, just lost really, because I'd lost a big part of my identity. I'd spent a long time training to wrestle and I'd just started doing matches and I just started building a name for myself in the scene. And then I had it all taken away and there was no baby coming at the other side. So yeah, it was hard to sort of balance all of that, I think. Mm.
Is there anything that you wish people understood better about the emotional aspects of IVF?
I think I think the most difficult thing for me was having unsolicited advice slash well-intentioned cheerleading along the way of it will happen, I can feel it and I know it's going to happen and I've got a feeling. And it's quite funny because now I obviously have come out the other side with a positive outcome, a lot of those same people are like, "See, I told you to hang on in
Right.
there," which is all very well-intentioned, nice thoughts, but it's not the case for everybody, and it might not have been the case for me. And I think you have to do a lot of soul searching within yourself of managing those expectations. And so I think the hardest thing for me was having people who didn't quite know what I was going through trying to relate it to their friend of a friend who had tried for 10 years, and then all of a sudden they got pregnant by a miracle naturally, and they didn't have to do IVF after all, and all those sorts of stories you get, which I think are all well intentioned, but they, for me, maybe some people they work, but for me, I found that was probably the one takeaway I thought was it's really changed my perspective on how to approach other people going through stuff that I might not have any idea what they're going through. And, therefore, I think it's taught me to listen to people more rather than feel the discomfort of feeling like I have to offer something back that I have no knowledge of or authority on, you know?
Someone said to me that I go to my therapist wanting answers, and all he does is ask me questions. And I go to my friends to get my feelings out, and all they do is give me answers. Sometimes just listening is enough, right?
Yeah, I think just absorbing and being uncomfortable in the moment rather than trying to like offer a solution that you can't offer.
Yeah,
Or
I
you can
think
always
so.
adopt. You can always adopt. That's another one.
Just a huge emotional journey in
Yeah,
itself. I
it's a whole different ballpark, and it's an amazing journey in its own way, and it's not easy either. You can't just adopt it. That is a whole other really painful long experience for people. So, you know,
100%.
and they're not it's not an alternative. It's not like a consolation prize like people who choose to adopt and who are adopted. It's a whole different journey. So to
Mm.
sort of add it in like, "Oh, yeah, just do plan B, it's fine,"
And
is not
it's a whole different emotional journey for 2 people as
Yeah,
well to get
yeah,
over. You don't have to just convince one of you that that's the consolation prize. It's because it isn't that at all. It's just it's a completely different path.
yeah.
Was there anything in particular that friends or family did that helped you feel supported?
I think the friends and family who gave me space, and would check in, but not push for detail, if that makes sense. I think space was one of the biggest things, and just letting me indulge information when I wanted to, not when I didn't want to. That was amazing. I also think just not talking about IVF was also good, just going and seeing my friends and doing non IVF related stuff. And I think friends who were, because I was going through IVF at a time where a lot of my friends were having babies. Um, and I think that was really difficult for some of my friends to navigate how to be about it, and kind of just not shoving their experience in my face, but also not making me feel awkward about it at the same time. And it's a really
Mm,
hard way to describe how to do that well because it's different for everybody. But I think some of my friends made more of a concerted effort to make me feel comfortable with
mm.
that than maybe some others who I think hadn't really thought about the implications of baby shower invites or,
Okay.
that kind of thing. They're difficult things to navigate and everyone's different. But yeah, I think just space and consideration were probably the two big things.
And having now sort of gone through the process, we've got a bouncing baby boy, so to speak, and you can look back. Is there any advice that you would give to someone starting their IVF journey?
Well, to offer my unsolicited advice to those starting their IVF journey, I think finding your tribe of people who get what you're going through. I had a very small select circle of people who I knew had been through what I was about to go through, and they were my cheerleaders throughout. So I think finding those people, be it strangers online on a forum through to a friend or a family member who may have been through the same treatment, to just be able to tell them how shit it is. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on this?
You can do whatever you want.
Um, the whole experience is just shit. So I think finding somebody who can just sort of understand that, understand what points of the journey you're at, they are very likely to not offer you any advice because they know that everyone's journey is going to be different, but they understand where you're at and you can kind of bounce off. And I think that was quite fundamental to me because none of my close family or friends had been through it, but I had a couple of people that I knew had and who I didn't know that well at the beginning of my journey, but I got to know because I'd reached out and explained that's what was happening for me, and they were brilliant. They were just a really good little circle of people I could just go, "Oh, this has happened. Did you have to do this test or did you have to go through this process?" And that was helpful.
Are there any specific memories or special milestones within that journey that particularly stand out for you looking back now?
Um, it working? um, that's a tricky question. Key moments for me were just going and embracing the fact that I might need some help or some answers in that department. I think that was a big moment. You know, it's a big moment to decide to walk into a fertility clinic or a doctor's and say, I need help. And I think that was probably the sort of pivotal moment of just accepting yourself that you might need to go down this path, and getting the answers. And I think that's probably my biggest sort of um, takeaway from the whole thing is if you think or are worried about your facility, just going and having the routine screening, even if you have no reason to believe it, if you just have a feeling that there might be something up, the sooner you have the information, the better. Because I'm glad I went when I did because I was actually quite young. And one of the reasons that I wasn't able to sustain a pregnancy from the beginning was my hormone levels were all very low and I had no idea. And I could have waited much longer to find all that
Mm,
out, delayed this process even longer. And, you know, when it took as long as it did,
mm,
unfortunately, time is of the essence with these things. So I think just being able to empower myself with that information and make that decision for myself was probably the biggest milestone. Um, and I'm glad I advocated for myself and did it when I did because it took a bloody long time. So I got on the road a bit quicker than I think I might have done if I hadn't taken charge of it earlier.
What emotions came up for you during the photo shoot itself?
The photo shoot was quite scary for me actually because I hadn't told very many people that I was even pregnant. I was hiding it for a very long time. And by the time we did the shoot, I was 32 weeks, I think.
Mhm.
So I was carrying a bump by this point, and it was the first time I'd actually publicly displayed my bump outside of appointments and my house.
Wow.
I was wearing very baggy clothes at work. People knew, but I was still making quite a concerted effort to hide it. I think because of how painful I found being confronted by bumps in the tube or in the office, like going through my IVF journey, I think I was just very conscious of not doing the same for other people. And I think I was very hesitant to even do a photo shoot because of how those sorts of things have made me feel in the past. And I realized I was doing it for myself, not for anyone else. And that made it, more of a celebration by the time we got to it. But I was feeling quite anxious about doing it because of that. And I was quite conflicted. But when I actually got there and we started the shoot, I was really pleased I did it because, it was sort of a moment where I sort of went, oh, I can enjoy this now and I can embrace what's happening. And, I can be proud of the human that I'm growing inside me, and I found a way to market that felt very real to me, which was, in my comfort zone of the wrestling ring. um I don't think I would have done the shoot in any other way. It had to be like
Mm.
this.
Did the shoot feel like a celebration of your journey with IVF?
I think that's what the conclusion I came to was. I was sitting at home and thinking, I'm not going to be pregnant forever, and I haven't got anything to market. And because of my anxieties about it, I hadn't really embraced it to that point. And I think I was trying to work out how I could market without going down a route that didn't feel very me. And I just suddenly thought, "Ugh, bump shoot in a ring where I normally take bumps seems to be the way forward." And there was only one way I was going to do it, which would be to do it in a wrestling ring in my wrestling gear. And so to be able to bring that world I had to leave behind in order to create the world I've now got was really important to me. It was like bringing together two sides of my life that had been separate. And, my hope is I will return to the ring at some point. So, it was a really important thing for me to bring them together. So to do that shoot in that way, surrounded by a grimy, grotty wrestling gym, which is where I'm happiest. Surrounded by people like my coach and, you know, you, one of the top wrestling photographers. It was exactly how I wanted to do it. So it was, it was really empowering because I feel like a superhero in my wrestling gear. So superhero with a bump.
Superhero with a bump. How were you made to feel during the shoot? And did that feeling progress during the shoot itself?
I think at first I felt quite anxious because I think in my head I was like, oh, I want these images to look really strong and I want them to look a certain way, but they're not your sort of traditional maternity, warm, flowery gown, hands round the bump kind of feet, that kind of. I didn't know how to balance the sort of violence of wrestling with the warmth of being a mum to be. And
Hmm.
I think what was great about the shoot was I feel like we got that balance on point, that I didn't feel at any point we were being twee or cliched about it. We weren't taking me into a space that felt not right. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, we did a couple of fun shots of me putting my husband in a chokehold, which are hilarious. But we also did some really nice, strong imagery that I think showed pride and strength without compromising the fact that, it's a maternity shoot. And, I don't think they come across as cold or jarring, the images. They sort of strike that balance I was hoping for, which is that, you can be a mum and a wrestler, and that's fine. And I
Mm,
think that's what I wanted as well. I wanted a picture that felt like me, but also embraced the change that was coming.
mm,
And I think that's what was really powerful about it for me. And I feel like learning to wrestle was a battle, and sort of coming against my demons, um, with my confidence and my anxiety to like get through training. And I'm pretty sure my trainer can attest to that, that was a uphill battle to get me to, you know do all the things that you need to do in order to train to wrestle. But I feel like I continued that through the IVF journey, and that's why it was really important to me that that's
mm.
how the shoot turned out. So they are strong images, and they feel very in keeping with what I felt internally.
What did you feel like seeing yourself in those maternity photos for the first time?
I think when I first saw the photos, I was so pleased because they not only were they exactly the right balance and tone that I wanted from them, but they just looked, although we've already discussed the setting of the bin room of a leisure centre that has been turned into a wrestling school, um, is not the most desirable location for a maternity shoot. I thought it looked money. I think that was what it just looked really strong and bold and just slick and clean shots. And I was really happy with those. And I think the imagery was just very striking. They were very clean and they weren't trying too hard, if that makes sense. It at the time it didn't feel like we were trying too hard to make them something. And I don't really know how to explain that better than that. I was trying to find examples online before we went of imagery, and obviously trying to find pregnant women doing combat sport is not an easy Google search. So I think when I was looking it up, there was a lot of very naff sort of women in boxing rings, like pretending they were like boxers, which was
Right.
a weird niche, but there is maternity shoots in boxing rings, I did discover. And they just look very staged and they look very phony. And I felt like we managed to make them look really authentic and um you know, exactly how I wanted them to be, wrestling portraits where the wrestler happened to be pregnant. So I was really happy with them.
Was there a particular photo that felt like it truly captured everything that you went through?
Ooh. I think there's a silhouetted one we did, which is full length, and I'm stood in profile, and you can just see the outline of the bump. And my biggest pride and joy is that I managed to fit in my wrestling gear for the shoot, um, which I that photo to me just encapsulated exactly what was in my head. I'm still me even after everything we've been through, and you know, I'm still a fighter, I'm still a wrestler, and I've got through to the other side. I think that was really important to me, and I felt like that shot was, yeah, exactly what I was after. And I really love the shots of me just hanging out in the ring, like the one that you put up for the award, because yeah, that shot of me with the beanie hat on, sitting by the ropes, because that has been my home for the past 7 years, just sort of sitting around rings, chatting to people and hanging out, and a big part of my life that's been missing. So to sort of be back hanging out on a ring in my tracksuit bottoms was just nice and felt comfortable, and it's where I'm most happy. So yeah, I like those shots too.
And what reactions did you get from people close to you when they saw the photos?
Everyone that I've shown the photos to has been just blown away by how cool they are, and how me they are. And I think that's been a really nice thing of, you know, I think the most common reaction to the photos has been, "Oh, of course you have a photo of you in your wrestling gear, pregnant. Of course, that's so you," which it is. So I think that's yeah, that's what I wanted, and it makes sense when people see them, which I think is quite funny. That's what would make sense, but it does.
Have you thought about one day in the future sharing these photos with your son?
Oh, 100%.
Hmm.
His mum and dad are wrestlers. He needs to know. I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, was just, uh, just to be like, yeah, your mum's a fighter. So yeah, it was one of the reasons I did it really. I was just like, how freaking cool to be able to just sort of say one day, oh, that's my mum and dad.
But when you look
Mm.
at these photos now, do you
Mhm.
feel that they reflect a new strength in you? And do you feel that you're a different person? And in what way are you a different person 4 years after this journey started?
I've not necessarily changed, but I feel like it's embellished and enhanced my belief in how strong I am and my relationship with my husband is that we got through those 4 years. We thought getting through beginner's school of wrestling was hard. Um, but, when you actually do IVF and get through to the other side, I think those photos represent to me a long, quite private journey that no one can really ever truly understand how hard it was, but we kept going, and that under the facade there was a big battle going on. And I guess a bit like my superhero analogy I always give, it's like that sort of Superman thing of going in the phone booth and he peels off and he's got his hero outfit on underneath. That's kind of what it feels like to me. It feels like you've peeled back a layer, and behind every person is a battle, a secret battle, and that's ours. Was our journey to parenthood, and I feel like that those photos really represent that to me.
What do you hope that these photos remind you of in the years to come?
I hope they remind me of. Hmm, it's really hard to say anything other than that. I just think they're badass, those pictures, and I just think I'll look back on them and be like, what a badass. It's something that I had dreamed of for a very long time, and I worked very hard, both physically and emotionally, to get to a point where we could be in the fortunate position to have this moment and to be able to capture that moment in a way that encapsulates my journey, me as a person, my relationship, and our passion for our hobby and our sort of other life that we lead was really important. But I think, yeah, just being able to capture something that's so fleeting in the grand scheme of things is really important. It is only potentially a once in a lifetime moment, and you will never be pregnant with that baby ever again. So to be able to sort of have a moment where you can really embrace that and see it in your little tartan pants is really important.
How important was it for you to have the guidance of not only an experienced photographer on the day, but also the guidance of someone like Fliss in the run up to it in terms of style direction and someone to go to and someone to cultivate ideas with? How important was that value chain to your experience?
I think the value of getting the photos done professionally was a two-tier sort of thing for me. I mean, firstly, for me, it was really important that these photos looked a certain way. And because I wanted them to represent me as a wrestler, it was important to me that someone who understood that environment and how those shots looked, and make them look as authentic as possible, and take the inspiration from other shots like it. And they just happened to be someone pregnant in them, was really important to me. But I think also the extra layer was having you guys who have that experience with maternity shoots. So, I could have got a different wrestling photographer to do them, but they wouldn't necessarily have had the experience of getting the best out of the poses and making sure the bump is in shot. I wouldn't know how to pose with a bump. And some of the things we did felt kind of weird in the moment, but I now, looking at the photos, go, oh, I see what we were doing there. That's why I had to lean in that awkward angle. Got it. And I think what was also great was having Fliss, who not only is a mother and has been pregnant and can make you feel comfortable in that setting, she understands what you need in order to make a shot make make sense from a sort of styling point of view. So, she really was good at directing me on colors and thinking about silhouettes and how to sort of get the most out of my body and my body shape at that point. So, making sure I had form fitting, because what's the point in wearing a big baggy jumper if you're trying to take a picture of a bump? So she made me think about it in that way. And she sent some really good references and mood boards that helped me piece together what I thought would
Mm.
make for the best looks. And yeah, I'm not very good at that stuff, so it was good to have a good pro hand at all that. Definitely.
What has been the best part of motherhood so far?
God. I think the most awesome thing about being a mum is getting to know this brand new person and seeing every new thing that they learn. Even in just the 4 weeks that I've had my son, he seems to pick something new up every day, and it's quite fun to see him developing and becoming a person and a personality. Um, yeah, he's awesome.
You've smiled throughout this whole thing, this whole 46 minutes. You've like, it's clear that motherhood suits you, I think,
Oh, I
personally.
love it. I love it.
Can we,
I'm having the best time.